Good morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise and Pickswise.com. Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Happy everybody. You know, he's Jared Smith. Big show for you guys today as we get set for divisional playoff weekend, but we'll look at some of the games coming up and some of the plays that we have as well. We'll get into the NHL with Nick Alberga, and we'll do NFL Factor Cap, plus we'll have our plays of the day. Happy Friday, Jared Smith. Let's get it going today. How are we doing?
Yeah, how you doing, bud? It's been I feel like these games need to happen now that we're only in weekend mode. It's like the Super Bowl. You know, you wait, you do the handicap, and I'm trying to come up with different angles for these games, but it's just getting ready to kick off already, right?
It's always interesting when you get a situation with standalone games. You know, sometimes I tell people, you know, I'm always somebody who looks at the percentages of the money and the tickets. I follow the money. I kind of see where it goes throughout the week. I think that stuff matters. But when you're looking at standalone games, and especially when there's only a handful of them to bet, wild card weekend, divisional weekend, we'll get the next week, conference champions, it's hard to really decipher how much those numbers matter because everybody's only betting from a smaller sample set. So that's when I start to look at the actual number of wagers that are made, not just the percentages. I mean, look, there's a lot of ways, as you said, to dissect this stuff, and we get to the nitty gritty of it all. But let's look at some angles for divisional playoff weekend. And we'll start with props. I do want to give up my place because I don't think I'm on the show the rest of the weekend. So I'll let you guys know what I'm on today as we go forward. But I know, Jared, you said prior to the show that you had a couple of props that you were looking at.
Yeah, I think the angles. So when I dive into these games, you guys know me. I'm not the prop guy here on the show. That's Bobby's job, and he's fantastic at it. Yeah, so I don't want to. I'm not good at it, frankly. Like I know what my strengths and weaknesses are as a handicapper, and betting props besides contract incentives, besides this year's contract incentives, not my cup of tea. So when I do dive into the games, though, and I see matchups that are intriguing, yeah, you could say that props can be hatched from that. And the one thing when I dove into tomorrow's first game, the Jaguars Chiefs game, the one thing I noticed was the numbers for Jacksonville against the tight ends were dismal this year, 32nd in DVOA. And they really struggled last week against Gerald Everett, 6 for 109 and a touchdown. And then when you match that up with, then I was like, oh wow, those are really bad numbers. Like, all right, well, let's see what Travis Kelce's done in his most recent postseason games, and he's just complete nails. At least 7 targets, 95 yards, and 6 straight. So maybe this is a different Chiefs offense. Maybe it's a little more spread it out. I understand that. But I think the soft middle of this Jacksonville defense will be very available for Patrick Mahomes, who had over 300 yards passing. Kelce went over these numbers in the first game between these two teams. So I would say the Kelce tight end props, in any way you want to play it. You want to play touchdown, it's like minus 130-ish. You want to play receptions, don't love that as much. I would say the yards would be the way to bet it for me at 79.5. And I think Juju's another guy that I saw on Bobby's list that also fits that mold because he's not like a tight end per se, but he's a slot guy that is very effective over the middle, is kind of that roaming piece. And it's obvious that Patrick Mahomes has relied on him a lot this season, whereas Kelce's like the security blanket for years prior. I think Juju's kind of becoming that. So I would say Kelce and Schuster would be the two guys to target in that game for Kansas City. And it's obvious that their matchups certainly give us a little bit of an edge there.
If the game script goes the way I think it's going to go, I'll add one more prop from there, and that's Jerick McKinnon over his rushing yards prop. It's very low. It's in the low 20s. And if Kansas City does what I think they're going to do, he'll have opportunities to run the ball at some point. I mean, look, then there's always the opportunity with the number being in the low 20s, he could break it in one shot. But the only way I'm really playing this game right now, I lean on the Chiefs to cover just because historically Andy Reid off a bye is very good. And the Chiefs have faced a ton of big numbers before. And they're in this round, and they're used to going out and covering. They won by an average of 20 points in the divisional round, with the exception of the one game where Patrick Mahomes against the Browns went out and got injured right before halftime, and they didn't cover the number in that game. Other than that, if you go look at their divisional playoff history with Patrick Mahomes, he's won by 20 points every time. They're just flat out better typically because they're coming off a bye. But that said, Jared, here's how I played this, and I already locked in. -3 in the first quarter. Juicy -3 because you had to pay for it to get off 3.5, and -5 in the first half. Kansas City will start fast. if you've looked at Kansas City over their last 9 games, 7 of them they led at half. The only time they didn't was against the Chargers, divisional opponent, and against the Bengals, a game that they lost. And particularly if you look at the halftime leads that they've had in some of these games, Jared, 20-7 over the Jaguars the last time out, 24-3 over Vegas, 17-3 over Seattle, 27-14 over Denver, 13-3 over the Rams. Kansas City will start fast. Their game plan will be effective. The Jaguars probably a little bit, whether they want to admit it or not, emotionally sluggish after what they went through last week. So I love Kansas City here in the first quarter and in the first half. I would parlay them if you're allowed to, just because I think, if the first quarter comes in, the first half is coming in, right? So, but that's the way I've attacked this game, thinking Kansas City will start fast, and they've let teams back in the second half. And the Jaguars have been a much better second half team this year than the first. So I'll bank on Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the guys to get out early.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously been a strategy that's been successful for them. Their defense is playing better, I think, on the surface level than maybe the narrative would appear. That's always the narrative. Oh, their offense is great, but if their defense could only figure it out. Well, they're kind of a top 15 defense in schedule adjusted efficiency over the back half of the year. That's pretty good, right? Especially when your offense is top 3 basically from start to finish. I think the Jags are kind of a wild card in this game. I think Doug Peterson, he started the game last time with a surprise onside kick. And they asked him about it in the press conference this week. And he was like, yeah, I'm just going to tell you guys that I'm running it again. I'll tell you which side I'm going to. So I don't know if we're going to see that per se. But I think it's fair that Doug is probably one of the better coaches in this league. I think he's proven that this season. So I certainly expect there to be some wrinkles. And on the other side, for crying out loud, the Chiefs ran a goddamn carousel play in Week 18 against the Raiders, where they had all their players going.
They were just messing with everybody at that point. That's all it was.
And I think this is kind of where Andy Reid holds on to the top shelf liquor and he whips it out for this game, right? Like it's like when I didn't grow up in a very religious household, but I would imagine on Christmas Eve, right? You bring out the fine china, or whenever you have your big meal on Christmas Day or Easter Sunday, like you bring out the good stuff, right? You bring out the stuff that's on the top shelf to set the table. I think that's what we're going to see this week from Andy Reid. I don't know when we're going to see it. I have no freaking idea what it's going to be, but we're going to see some kind of gadget or gizmo at some point. So I think this will be a perfect lid lifter to the weekend because you have two coaches that are completely unafraid of the moment. And unlike Brandon Staley, right? But I think you're going to see a very entertaining game. It's the highest total game of the week. There should be points. The prop market should be fun. More total points, more prop opportunities. So I'm on board with shoving chips into the middle in this game, especially in the prop market, especially in the derivative market, if you feel like you have an edge, because I think there's gonna be some fireworks in this game for sure.
I'll add a couple of props in from the Giants-Eagles game on Saturday as well that I really like. And I told Bobby Jones last week, Bobby Stanley, dear Lord. Bobby Stanley, prop holiday, I told him last week. Yeah, great golfer. Yes, I told him, I said, avoid the win. Give me a cut 3 wood. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, but I told Bobby Stanley last week about Daniel Jones' passing yards prop, and it cleared it in the third quarter. It's even lower this week because of his past performance against the Eagles, where in the one game he played them this year, he only threw for 169 yards. Daniel Jones is going over this 218. If he doesn't, the Giants are getting their doors blown off. So Daniel Jones over 218.5 passing yards. If the Giants have any chance to stay in this game, they're going to have to be able to throw the ball. I know the Eagles can be run on. And yes, running the ball and keeping the score low certainly favors the Giants. But even if the Giants start trailing, they're going to have to throw to get back in this thing. Daniel Jones, and I think this is a much different Daniel Jones than what we saw back in week 14 when they played, despite the fact that it was only 5 weeks ago. So I love Daniel Jones over 218.5 passing yards. Obviously, A.J. Brown getting in the touchdown on only minus 105 is a sweet number to take right there. And of course, Jared, how could we forget about the giant killer himself, Boston Scott?
Got to bet
in 8 games, 414 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 222 receiving yards, and a passing touchdown. That's 10 touchdowns in 8 games. Boston Scott plus 390. You got to go to the window with it, right?
Yeah, of all the props in this game, I definitely can make a strong case why Daniel Jones won't go over, but it's not one that I'm like overly passionate about because I think game script tells me he goes over, but I think the way that the Eagles play their defense, which is too deep funnel, everything's in front of them. It's going to have to be dink and dunk city for them. And that's what Philly wants. And then the Giants don't have a ton of like, Debo Samuel types that are game breakers that can, right. Anyone really, but the yak is really where the Eagles get hurt sometimes because it's all short stuff. And then some guy breaks a tackle and then boom, he's up the field for 50 yards. And then you're easily going over this total. The Giants don't have those types of receivers, but game script and Brian Daboll tells me that he's going to have a lot of bites at the apple to go over that total. So while I would probably lean under there, it's not what I'm passionate about. I think the one in this game I'm really passionate about, you got to bet Boston Scott as a touchdown. I don't know. Well, let's just leave it at this. If you're betting Boston Scott touchdown, I would also bet Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. Those are kind of one or the other is going to happen in this game because I just think the Eagles are going to rely a lot on the running game. And if you want to throw Miles Sanders into the mix, that's fine. But for some reason, he's like allergic to the end zone. So maybe stay away from that one. But I think the key to this game is just how healthy he is running the ball. And if he's calling if Nick Sirianni's calling a lot of designed runs early in this game, I would bet Jalen Hurts' live touchdown prop because I think at some point he'll get into the end zone. You'll know in the first 5 to 10 minutes. If on the first drive, Jalen Hurts has a design run called for him, it's like, all right, go time. Like, here we go. This is going to be a game where he's going to use his legs a lot. He hasn't used his legs much. He's been hurt and then, he's been injured. So I'm curious how the game is called for Philly offensively, but I think the running game is got to be the key. So Boston Scott and Jalen Hurts, to me, the touchdown props there with those two guys are must bets.
Anything else on Sunday prop wise that you're looking at, Jared?
Josh Allen. I think, to be honest, someone joked on Twitter, I forget who, I'm sorry if I'm not giving him credit, that he's going to parlay all the touchdown rushing yard prop for the quarterbacks this weekend, like all 8 of them. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think I do think there's going to be a significant part of the game for Josh Allen for running the football. And it does seem to increase when we get into the postseason, his desire, his appetite for running it. And to me, that's how you prevent the turnovers. It's just have him run the ball. He's not turning the ball over, fumbling it. They're all throws. So if he's running the ball straight down people's throats, and it also, we talked about this on Pickswise playbook. That's kind of how he gets into the flow of the game. Is he calls design runs from the sideline, but also scrambles. So I think Josh Allen's rushing props, attempts, yards, touchdown. I think that would be the prop angle in the Bengals-Bills game. I don't really have a good prop angle in the Niners-Cowboys game. It's all about how well Brock Purdy plays and what the situation
hasn't been in the
there.
end zone in the last 2 games, so you feel like maybe you lean on him to finally find the end zone here. That's the only thing I could really think of. At some
Debo's
point,
a rock star. That would be the guy I would target. Debo's the star on this team.
I would look at Ayuk just simply because you could see week after week, he's, with Purdy, he's gaining a lot more chemistry, and I think that those two together, if you're getting a passing touchdown, I think it's a traditional passing touchdown, not like one where, again, you dump it off to Samuel and he runs 45 yards down the sideline. Like, those are hard to predict. Yes, that very much could happen, but those are much harder to predict than necessarily, a route that is run by Ayuk into the end zone. So, real quick,
Ayuk's had the quietest 1,000-yard season, I think, in the history of the NFL. I mean,
Jared, if he was on a dozen teams, he'd be a number 1 easily.
Yeah.
If he was on the dozen, he could be a number 1 on the Giants right now.
Oh,
easily be a number 1
without a doubt.
So there are plenty of teams out there. Look, he'd be a number 1 on the Jaguars right now. He's better than Christian Kirk. He's better than Zay Jones. He
was a first-round pick, right? Was he end of the first round? I think?
First or second.
Yeah.
First or second. Real quick, let me just kind of, because like I said, I won't be on the show this weekend.
First round.
What's
25th overall pick. 25th pick.
As far as the Sunday games, I have no strong feel on the Giants in Philadelphia, especially after last week. I mean, it is odd to me that, this number is exactly the same as it was back in Week 14 at MetLife. That the Eagles, I think, look, it says 2 things. One, that odds makers are a little concerned about the health of Jalen Hurts. He only completed 57% of his passes in Week 18. That they are showing some real concern that he might not have his sharpest game. And then as well, I think there's a lot of recency bias for Brian Daboll and how tough and how well coached the Giants are. I think that's a big part of it as well. So it's hard to figure out exactly why this number is shorter than what many would have expected, because most people would have I would have think it would have been around 8.5 to 9, along where Kansas City's is. But I'll stay off this one and not try to financially hedge my emotions like I did last week in betting the Vikings. So I'll just sit back and throw things at the TV this week. I know.
Let's just leave it at this. I do not think the Giants offense is going to play as well as they did last week.
They played a perfect game.
That is a prediction that I feel very confident with.
You're asking them.
I agree that I think the volatility with this number completely surrounds Jalen Hurts. The dude's only played one game in the last month, and he didn't look good in that game. And he admitted after the game that he felt like shit. Now, you would think 2 weeks would make him feel better, but if you're feeling that bad 2 weeks ago, I don't think 2 weeks is going to fully heal what's happening.
Yeah.
I think it is absolutely fair to say he will be less than 100% in this game. Now, maybe his 80, 90% is still good enough to win. Probably is. But if it's like 50, 60, and then he takes a hit in the middle of the game and it drops, and I don't know. I think that's a lot of downside.
And he only had like 13 rushing yards on 9 carries against the Giants in Week 18. And that was against backups.
He was not 100%
if he loses his legs. Yeah, if he loses his legs, that changes the game dynamically.
Totally
Real quick
agree.
on Sunday, I am going to back Dallas and take the 4 points here. I think the number being what it is, and I love the under in this game, by the way. When this thing opened at 46.5, I thought it was a gift. My numbers put it at 44. I don't think we get close to this number. I think you see these two defenses show out. As good as Brock Purdy has been, he'll probably be a little bit more limited than normal than what he is. And my favorite bet of the week, Jared, is the Buffalo Bills. I mean, I can't. Oh, wow. The entire world is sitting on Cincinnati right now, getting this number. And all I have to do is look at the ticket count and the money and see that, 33% of the tickets are on Buffalo with 62% of the money. I mean, and this number keeps going in the opposite direction. It keeps going from 4.5 to 5, now up to 5.5 across the board. So I think Buffalo's the right side here. So that's where I kind of am with the rest of the weekend. So any objections?
I mean, I feel like I've been on an island all week with the Niners. Everyone really sharp that I talk to makes really, including Clef TA, who's giving out the Cowboys as his 3-star play. Cowboys. It's on the site right now.
I split that pick, by the way.
Oh, did you? Oh, you gave out the.
I gave out the total, and he gave out the side. Yeah,
he doesn't like writing totals. He's not a totals guy. Oh, right. That's not his thing. He doesn't like. Well, we've talked about this before.
Play, anything I said, I can get to the under on the 3-star play for San Francisco.
I mean, listen, if you feel like it's 3-star worthy, then you do your thing, brother. But I think so. From everything I've heard this week, and there's like a few people that I consider super, super sharp that I communicate with on a weekly basis. Every person that I talk to this week is kind of on opposite sides of everything. And I haven't heard really any consensus agreement on any of these games. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the movement kind of bounce around. Like Dallas and San Francisco, that thing's hopped over 3.5 to 4 like 4 times already. And I think we'll see Kansas City hit 9 because of the teaser number. I think we'll see the Giants, Eagles go to 8, maybe 8.5, 9 because of the teaser number. I don't know what we're going to see with Cincy and Buffalo. It looks like every time it's hit 6, that's been the buy point. For example, I was out last night at one of the local establishments here in town, and it was 6. And then I wake up this morning, and that shop's now down to 5.5. So it looks like there's just battles happening across the board with a lot of secondary key numbers on these games. And it's a very unique week that there has not been a sharp consensus really on any one side. Totals, I don't really cap as much, so I can't speak to that. But I haven't heard one real sharp move push a number through a key number and then keep it there. It's always gotten bought back. Now, maybe when the limits expand tomorrow into the weekend, that'll change. But it's a very unique week. There's only 4 games, obviously less fodder on the board, but there hasn't been a lot of sharp consensus this week. So I think it's fair. There's arguments to be made on both sides of the aisle with almost every single one of these games. And it's really on what you feel. So there's no sharp, there's no square this week. I think it's just whatever you like, whatever you think, and then let the chips fall because it's going to be another crazy weekend, I'm sure.
All right, let's pivot here to the chill of the ice as we welcome in Nick Alberga, host of Leafs Morning Take on the Nation Network and writer for Leafs Nation and Daily Faceoff, also co-host of the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast. Nick, good morning. Welcome in. I appreciate you joining us here on this Friday as we get ever so close to the trade deadline, about less than 6 weeks away now. So let's start there. Names that you think will be traded at the NHL trade deadline.
Fellas, first and foremost, great to be with you on this Friday. It just feels
Morning,
so
bud.
great being on a show on a Friday. I love it. To answer your question, when it comes to the NHL trade deadline, yeah, you're bang on. We're about 44 days away from the activity, and I hope there's activity because it's a salary cap world, and sadly, we're living in it. But I think some names to watch for, at least marquee ones. Bo Horvat, the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, having an incredible year. I think he's going to be on the move even as early as the next couple weeks. Chicago is a team to look at in general because they have Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves, two legends who I think could both be on the move. They're in expiring contracts. Chicago's rebuilding, so a lot, stresses and points towards both those guys being on the move. At least Patrick Kane, like that's the bigger of the two at this point in time in their careers. The St. Louis Blues are another fascinating team to me to watch. They're like a bubble team this year. They won the Cup a couple years back, certainly, but they got two guys on expiring contracts. Ryan O'Reilly, their captain, and Vladimir Tarasenko, one of their snipers, two other guys to watch for. And the last guy I'd bring up is Timo Meier from the San Jose Sharks.
Nice. The standings at this stage, I mean, we're more than halfway through the year. So, there's a lot of runway behind us, more runway behind us than there is in front of us. And when I pull up the Western Conference standings today and I look at the Pacific Division, I see the Seattle Kraken in first place. And it's not like we can say, oh, fluke, it's only been a few weeks. Like they played almost 50 games. Yet when I look at the odds for them to win the Western Conference, obviously significantly lower. Odds makers do not believe in this Kraken team that they can make a deep run in the playoffs. What does Nick say about the first place Seattle Kraken?
I honestly think there's a lot of value in Seattle right now, Jared. I think you look at the last, 10 games, I think they've won like 8 of them. Like they're on complete fire. Do I trust their goaltending? Probably not with Martin Jones and Philip Grubauer, but I think they've taken a lot of the DNA from the Vegas Golden Knights in their inaugural season and taken it to their second season, which I think is so fascinating because you look at the Kraken last year, they were a lottery team. Like they weren't good at all. So you started to wonder, was their expansion draft as good as Vegas is? And then all of a sudden they make some key additions, namely Bjorkstrand, Andre Burakovsky coming over from Colorado in the offseason. And they're a legitimate team. And I think they've done a good job of building from the back end up front. Again, I think the goaltending for me is still in question. But I actually do think, believe it or not, there is value in Seattle winning the Western Conference just because they seem to be like a team that's so locked in right now. And I think that's where you find your value specifically in the second half of the season. And I think on top of that, the Western Conference to me is so wide open where Colorado's been there, done that. They're not really looking to win the conference. I think they're just looking to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we'll get to that question, I'm sure. But I just think there's a handful of teams that will be involved in that convo to win the West this season.
Well, to that end, Nick, again, there's a lot of teams that are middle of the road this year that not a lot of people expected. You mentioned Colorado. You look at Calgary after the losses they've had. Even Edmonton, highest scoring team in the league as far as goals, even more so than Boston, and yet they can't seem to figure out defensively what they're doing. The Rangers sort of middling in these. The Panthers as well, not as potent as we thought they were going to be. Their offense and their goaltending is sort of taking a step back. Any of those teams you think that if they make the right move can surge towards the top of their respective conferences?
Well, the biggest reason for everything you just brought up is parity, but I think you're so bang on. Like the teams we expect to be good have really, really fluttered. Having said that, there's a reason why they play 82 games, and some will find their way, some will not. The Calgary Flames, I actually think on paper are a really good team. I thought they'd be much better than where they're at right now in the standings. The Oilers are, to me, one of the smallest of teams to watch. They've won 5 in a row. I think it's no secret they're looking for a defenseman between now and the trade deadline. And they possess the best player on the planet by a landslide. His name is Connor McDavid. Check him out. He's pretty good at hockey alongside Leon Draisaitl. I know. And then they also have Evander Kane back in the mix. They have Hyman. They have Nugent Hopkins. Like, it's just crazy for me to see as a Canadian because the Canadian team hasn't won a Stanley Cup since 1993. But I really, really like the Edmonton Oilers, and I'm always careful to tread carefully with that team because they've let me down so many times before. But I like how they're playing right now.
One should have won in
16-1.
'94, by the way, much to my chagrin, but that's a whole different story. Childhood.
Oh yeah, no, the Vancouver Canucks. That was not their year. That was not their year, Mark. That was our year for the Rangers to return to glory here. 16-1 right now over at Superbook for the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup, and they're behind a lot of teams that maybe you would think they should be in front of, right, Nick? They're behind the Devils, the Stars, the Knights, even the Leafs, your fellow Canadian brethren there. I guess that's the question of the day to me. If you had to pick one Canadian team to win the Cup, it's not even close for you. It's the Edmonton Oilers.
It's close. Like, I think there are three legitimate threats, at least as I have this conversation, with Calgary having an outside shot. I really like Calgary. I should preface by saying them. I had Calgary in my Stanley Cup going into the season. They just got to figure this out. Like, they pick up Kadri, they pick up Huberdeau, they pick up Uyghur. On paper, they seem to be a better team, just haven't lived up to expectation thus far. But I think you look at Winnipeg behind their sound goaltending. Josh Morrissey's having a really, really strong year. Could be in a contender for the Norris Trophy, Hellebuck for the Vezina Trophy. Like, I really, really like Winnipeg. So I would probably even go as far to say Winnipeg, Edmonton, and then sadly I just have Toronto because they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967 and haven't won a playoff series in 19 years. It's insane to me.
Exactly. All that said, when you talk about Toronto, I mean, it seems every team that we've talked about is all playing for second behind the Boston Bruins. They're the deepest. They are best coached. They have a defense like I haven't seen in the better part of 20 years. It's unreal how good they are on the defensive end. And it's not even like they're that one-sided team that plays great defense but doesn't score that much. No, they score a ton, as I mentioned before. So how does anybody beat this team?
Well, firstly, I'm hoping they have a camera crew around them, a la Michael Jordan back in the day, that fantastic documentary that consumed a lot of our pandemic lives. Because I say that, they have a fellow by the name of Patrice Bergeron, who I just have a sneaky suspicion this could be his final season. And the guy's the most consummate pro you'll find. Like, it's insane how good of a dude Patrice Bergeron is. And this is somebody who grew up a Leafs.
Except when he plays on your team. Everybody hates Patrice Bergeron. He's a punk.
That means he's a really good player usually. That usually means he's a really good player.
You can't stand him. Every time he scores a goal, you want to jump on the ice and punch him dead in the face. And he always seems to get big goals in big games. But, nobody likes Patrice Bergeron except for Boston fans.
Yeah, he's a gamer. So what I was saying is that, like, I hope there's a crew following this team because they're just so damn good. Having said that, how many President's Trophies in recent memory have gone on to win the Stanley Cup? That's why I think there's actually more value in a team not named Boston than there is on the Bruins. And I know history's history, and this year is different than any other, but certainly I think I would take my chances with somebody not named Boston just because I think the level they're playing at some point in time, like, they're due for a bit of regression. And I think they're trending towards regressing maybe in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Having said that, I think you're spot on. They're a really, really good team. They're another team I look that is going to add between now and the deadline. I think they're going to be in on Horvat. I think they're going to be in on O'Reilly. Like, might as well go all in. And as I mentioned, Patrice Bergeron could be in his final NHL season. The guy's had an incredible career, and the cherry on top for sure would be a potential Stanley Cup here.
Nick, I know we don't pay you to handicap the other sports, but this question is going to kind of encompass that, but I think you're still equipped enough to answer it. I think the NHL, in my opinion, and I saw a study on this recently, and I forget what the exact numbers are, but the NHL by par has the opportunity for the lowest odds teams to win. For some reason, the underdogs in the NHL postseason, especially the guy, like the Kings as an 8 seed a few years ago is the perfect example.
Yeah.
There is opportunity for teams because of the nature of the sport, how tight it is in the postseason. It's the tightest. I think it's the best postseason in all of sports. There is opportunity for teams that aren't the favorite to outlast their opponent if a goalie gets hot, et cetera, et cetera. My question being, is there one of those teams this year that is clearly not at the top of the heap, like beneath the Calgary Flames and the Jets and the Kraken? Like, I'm talking Kings, Panthers, Caps, Isles, Preds, Sabres, somewhere in that range, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 to 1, that you think, hey, you know what? If they do get a piece during the deadline and they get hot down the stretch, they can make some noise in the playoffs.
That's a fascinating question, man. Like, I know there's no value in Colorado, so I won't even start there. I love that. Like, bookmakers just haven't evolved. They're like, nah,
But they're
this
still
is not
6-1,
real.
and they were like 2-1 when the season started. So you could relatively
Okay.
say that there's some value there.
If you ask me, I think Colorado's winning the cup again. So there's actually value there.
I totally agree with you.
So to answer your question, let's go off the
I don't even
board. Let's
watch
go
the
with
NHL,
the new.
and I can agree with that statement.
Okay, there you go. To answer your question, I'm going to go off the board, and I don't even have their value in front of me, but I'm going to go with the New Jersey Devils just because this season has come out of nowhere. Like, we expect them to be better, but like there was a lot of serious question marks. They were calling for Lindy Ruff's head, who's the head coach, in the first 15 games, and they went on this magical run. Why not just continue that run? But it is at a point where I think a team can still make a lengthy run to get to not only a playoff spot, but to get to winning a Stanley Cup. The team I always like to bring up is St. Louis from a couple of years back. I think that run started like January 15th, where they were actually last place in the league, changed their coach, and then went on to win a Stanley Cup. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to happen every year, but like New Jersey's a team I would look at. And then I think you can never discount like a team like Washington and Pittsburgh. There's just so many legends on those rosters. Those are probably the three teams I would look at.
I like it.
I'll add this about New Jersey, and I'll say this much. There's two things I think that go against them. One, their youth. Typically, if you look at the Stanley Cup, winners over the last 5-7 years, they have a nice group of seasoned veterans who have been through the rigors of the play. I mean, go look at Tampa Bay, how many times they got to the playoffs where they finally broke through when they had all those young stars at Martin St. Louis back in the day and everything else. So I think their youth goes against them. But, it's strange. People don't notice this. The Devils have the best road record in the NHL, 18-2-2. By a wide margin, they have the best road record in the league. That's something I don't think that translates to the playoffs. I don't think you're going to expect in the playoffs to be able to continue to be on the road and win that many games because hot goaltending usually will show up. And everything is tighter in the NHL playoffs, and I don't know if they can keep that pace up. They've been very average at home, and home ice advantage matters. I mean, I think home field advantage matters when you talk about that stuff less in the NHL than any of the four major sports, but still, nobody would rather go. I'd rather be on the road for Game 7.
Yeah, I totally agree. I should preface by saying I've covered the Leafs for a long, long period of time. You could do whatever you want in the regular season. It gets to the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's a completely different ball game. So I couldn't agree more on that front. Like Jack Hughes has had a great year. Like there's a bunch of guys on New Jersey that have had great years, but I think you're so right. Like how long did it even take Colorado? I know Jabara is in here today, but it took like Colorado so long to get over that hump. The Washington Capitals, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I almost think like on your road to get there, sometimes you need to face adversity. And like, what does New Jersey truly face this season,
And it's funny because I think the opposite could be true, Nick, and we can close with this. Like there's teams that are at the top right now that when they get to the playoffs, the tight sphincter theory will apply.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also teams that are under the radar right now that probably coasted through a long regular season, like some of those veteran-laden teams Mark was talking about, that when the playoffs do get there, that's when all right, well, this is our time. This is our moment.
Yeah.
And you'll see, teams play over what they've done during the regular season. So I think, and again, that to me is why the NHL playoffs is the premier postseason, because I think there is so much upside with lower seeded teams that it makes very intriguing market bets and very intriguing numbers for the Stanley Cup and the Eastern Conference, Western Conference, markets, et cetera. And I love it. I don't watch a ton of hockey night to night. The timing of the season stuff, but man, when the playoffs start, there's just something else about it. And we're getting close, right? Like we're going to start to feel some of those playoff vibes really soon with some of these teams, right?
It's utter mayhem. The only thing I'm feeling in a couple of weeks will be the beach at All-Star Weekend and Sunrise. So looking forward to that first.
It's in Sunrise this year. Hit up Sawgrass Mills Mall. I'm sure you've been down there before. Those are my old stomping grounds down there. Great outlets right across the street.
Good.
You can walk to it from the stadium. Good. Weather should be great for you down there in Sunrise.
Yeah, so checking out that. And then after that, I think there's like a stretch drive to the trade deadline March 3rd. And then, into the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's going to be tons of fun. I think you're so right. It's a tough sport to handicap. I always say it. People text me every day for picks. I'm like, I cover this league religiously. And because of the parity, it is so hard to handicap games day in, day out. The other day was a perfect example. Dallas, San Jose. I'm like, there's no way San Jose is going to be in this game. It's 3-0 Dallas, and they storm back. It's just a really, really difficult league, but that's why I love it.
Yeah. Love it, man.
Listen, Wishing your Maple Leafs the best. Like I do every year, I'll make a bet to them to get out of the first round and keep my money away because eventually it's going to happen, I think. But nonetheless, I'm really going to, you may have convinced me to put a bet on the Kraken to at least win the West because I don't think they would beat Boston or anybody from the East, but 7-1, 8-1, wherever the number is, Seattle to win the West might not be a bad look at this point in time. He's Nick Alberga. Make sure you guys give him a follow on Twitter and keep up with all the hockey content at the Golden Muzzy, Muzzy, host of Leafs Morning and also co-host of the NHL on Fantasy, NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast. Appreciate the time, brother. Enjoy the weekend.
No worries, guys. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Be well, bud. Right. Great. He does such a great job covering the NHL. I know Lauren gives out a ton of picks too on the show, but there's a lot of context that I don't have because I don't watch the league at all. And I rely on people like him to fill in the blanks because when we do get to the postseason, it's like a sprint to get up to speed because there is a ton of value in the NHL postseason, especially with the underdogs. But I need smart people like Nick to get me the context required to bet it.
So wait a second. Are you telling me you've been in Vegas now for almost 6 months and you haven't gone to a Golden Knights game yet?
I have gone to a Golden Knights game. I did.
Oh, okay.
And they got their asses kicked. They lost 3-1 to the Kraken of all teams.
There you see, maybe that's the sign.
The Kraken had a good year.
We need to drop the Kraken down to win the Western Conference. I think that
would be some bet. That would be some bet if it hits. I mean, it would be, I think, if you want to talk about narratives, and I know we don't bet solely based on narratives, but sometimes betting on narratives can be fun. They're more betting with your heart than betting with your head. I think that would be one of the better narratives of the entire sporting calendar. If a team in its second year of existence, similar to the year that the Golden Knights made it to the Stanley Cup, it was absolutely insane here in Vegas for sure. I can't think of a better story than that.
All right, let's pivot back to the NFL here. We'll play NFL fact or cap. Basically, I'll give you a statement, Jared. You tell me whether it's a truth or a lie. Eagles win, but Giants cover. Fact or cap?
I would say fact. I think that makes the most sense to me. 24-20-ish kind of is the vibe for me on this game. I think the Eagles cover the teaser number. Let's just leave it at that.
I would argue that the easiest way to play this game is lay the points of the Eagles or take the Giants on the money line. I feel like it's one of those.
Oh wow!
Is kind of
so you're on the opposite of this then.
Well,
either Giants win or Eagles cover.
Right. So, and the only reason I say that is just because when it comes to a divisional opponent, and you saw the distance between the Giants and the Eagles this year, yes, you could take the 7.5, and the Giants could lose this thing by a field goal. But if they're in the game. I almost would rather have, if it's, coming down to the wire in the fourth quarter, I'd rather have the money line ticket in my hand because of the value that I would get on it. The Giants are probably getting plus 275, if not closer to 3-1. I haven't even looked at the money line here. Let me just take a quick gander of what it is. But
let's just leave it at this. As you take a look at the money line, here's what I'll say. If you are going to bet the Giants in this game, like if you think they're going to cover the spread, you absolutely should also bet the money line. Like it's the odds of it falling in the middle, I think, are lower than the odds of the Giants winning outright. Like I think you'll see, I think there's more scenarios out there where the Giants win the game outright than the Eagles winning by 1 to 7 points. If that makes sense.
Right. I agree. I mean, it's plus, like I said, plus 285 I have on one book. So 275 in that range. Just typically what a touchdown is in that range. So anyway, all right, let's move on to the next one. AFC Championship game will not be hosted here in Atlanta. Fact or cap?
Well, then it would have to be Cincinnati winning.
Yeah, right. Cincinnati or Jacksonville losing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say cap there. I think the Chiefs and the Bills are going to be the two teams. And I think that Bengals game is going to be very close. So the Nugget and Clef TA tweeted this out this week. It's a fantastic trend. It's arguably one of the few trends that I'm putting stock in this week. The Bengals have gone 21 consecutive games without losing by more than a field goal when Jamar Chase is in the lineup. They just don't get blown out when he's on the field. And it makes sense. He's the game breaker. He's the guy that keeps them close when they need that big play. And I think the Bills win the game. I think it'll probably be, in my opinion, one of the best games of the weekend. But I do think the Bills win. And I can't see the Jaguars winning. So, yeah, I think it's the Chiefs-Bills AFC Championship game, and I think you're going to be tailgating outside there at the Mercedes-Benz Dome.
I hope so. That sort of leads us into our next one because, while Club TA's information and trends are always great information, I would ask, how many of those games did the Bengals play without 3 starting offensive linemen? Because that's what they're going into in this game this week, which is part of the handicap that I have on Buffalo as to why I think they're going to cover this number. I don't think we're giving enough credit at all to what that means and how often Joe Burrow may be on his back. But the question is, Joe Burrow outplays Josh Allen factor cap. He's going to have to.
I think that's he's going to have to. I mean, the pushback that I'll give you, and it's at the top of my, I mean, literally, I did a freaking musical chairs roundup of all the Bengals offensive linemen this week and who came in to replace Jonah Williams. It was a left guard, backup left guard, Jackson Carman, who was bad. The guy who came in to replace Alex Kappa, the right guard, had the lowest run blocking grade of any guard over the weekend. I mean, the Bengals offensive line is in shambles. But the one pushback that I have to that, because I think we're hearing that everywhere, Joe Burrow has the second lowest time to throw of any quarterback in the NFL. He's already made the adjustment. We heard about it last year. He took 9 sacks. They still won a playoff game. We heard about it all season long. And then all of a sudden, Joe's just like, screw this. Like, I can control how much I get sacked based on how quickly I get the ball out. And you also have to credit Taylor for kind of making some adjustments offensively and allowing Joe to be a little more quick and decisive with his throws and his reads. But we always talk about Tom Brady having the quickest time to throw in the entire NFL. You can't sack him. Well, Joe is right there. I mean, literally, it's like 0.07 seconds off from where Joe is to where Tom is. So to me, that's the other side of that offensive line handicap this week that I think it might be a little bit overstated, that everyone's like, oh, how is Joe going to have time to throw? Well, he hasn't needed that much time this year. He's been able to get the ball out quick. So that to me is the fascinating counter to what the Bengals are going to do offensively. For the Bills, I mean, geez, Josh Allen, he's like a freaking, he's just 2 extremes, one extreme or the other. Big time throw or turnover worthy play. Like, it seems like every single play is that. And I think what it's coming down to is he just doesn't trust the offense and he doesn't trust the scheme. And you go from Dable to Ken Dorsey, and I wouldn't trust Ken Dorsey either that much. So I understand why Josh Allen maybe is trying to do a little bit too much right now. And that scares me with Lou Anarumo and arguably one of the best defensive masterminds in the NFL right now, who makes better adjustments than anyone on the fly. Now, the one thing that scares me about the Bengals defense is you got your old boy Eli Apple sitting out there on an island trying to guard Stephon Diggs all weekend. That ain't going to be a good matchup for the Bengals. So I could see both quarterbacks having their moment in this game. To me, it's all about, can Josh Allen hold on to the freaking ball? And right now, the numbers say he can't. So I'll go with Joe Burrow outplays Josh Allen. Fact.
All right. Well, crossfire we will. Cowboys get revenge for the Niners. Get revenge on the Niners for last year. Factor cap.
Yeah, again, I'm on an island with this pick. Every sharp person, it scares the hell out of me because I hate being on an island, but every single sharp person that I interact with this week loves the freaking Cowboys. So, and I don't know how much the betting splits, are really going to factor into determining what's the sharp or the square side. Because like I said, I look at the market and I look at the sports books that set the market. None of them are onshore, guys. And I know that it's taboo to talk about the offshore markets, but they set the market, and you could tell where the lines are moving based off of what the offshore book does, particularly one specific offshore book. I won't name it, but there is a very strong correlation to what the offshore market does and then what happens here onshore. And I can see at all 4 games this week, I can put clear markers on one side of the line or the other. And I could say, I know it's not going to get past this because every time it's gotten to this point, it's gotten bought down. But the one exception has been, I'm starting to see a little bit of movement towards the Niners here offshore. And I think 4, I'll be honest, I think we see 4.5 come Sunday. I honestly do. That's where the market opened. And then it got bought down very quickly from 4.5 down to 3 almost. And then it shot back up to 4. We've been kind of hovering at 4 all week. but I am starting to see some fluctuation towards 4.5. So maybe I'm not on the wrong side of this. Maybe I got the Niners at 3.5, and maybe that's the right side. Who freaking knows? I think there is no right and wrong side this weekend because both teams, in this game specifically, you can make very strong cases for. I hope I'm right. I hope the Niners win, but I understand why people think Dallas, especially if Dak Prescott plays well, can cause some problems for this Niners secondary that has not been as nails as we expected D'Amico Ryan's Niners defense to be. Up front, they're great. I think they're going to play the run well. But I think there's some holes offensive or, for Dak to exploit if he can throw the ball to the outside hashes, if he can get CeeDee Lamb involved. I don't think Dalton Schultz will have a big game. The Niners are great against tight ends. But I do think there's some opportunity for Dallas to cover this number. So while I do think the Niners win this game, I think the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl, frankly. These are the two best teams, I think, right now in the NFL. And I would probably say that the Cowboys get revenge, because I'm going to stick to my guns and say the Niners win this game, even though all the sharp people that I trust are all telling me I'm crazy.
I'll add this just as a little nugget to put in your back pocket there. You know how many games this year Dak Prescott has – you know how many times this year Dak Prescott's gone back-to-back games without a turnover? You guessed it.
Zero.
So he didn't have a turnover last week, so you can –
that's what I wrote up for the, I wrote it up in my article this week, and the last line, literally the last line of the entire write-up. I'll read it to you guys right now. You guys get it first. It literally just dropped over the morning. I said, if both defenses, and I think it's fair to say both defenses are kind of like 1A, 1B. Like, these are two of the top 5 defenses in the league. D'Amico Ryan's up-and-coming coach. Yeah, I could see that. The one reason why the under scares me is because I could see this game being a pass funnel, because the Niners are fantastic against the run. Dallas is not going to be able to run the ball. And I think if Dallas has any chance to win, they need to take away the running game for Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. They need to make Brock Purdy beat them. And if this game just turns into a throw fest on both sides, that's what scares me on the under. But I agree with you. Both defenses are absolutely rock solid. So if both defenses cancel each other out, it's going to come down to which quarterback makes the fewest mistakes. And the last line of my article this week is, it's crazy to admit, but I trust Purdy over Prescott. And that's kind of where I'm at here. And that's why I think we're going to see the Niners win. But, I mean, he's a rookie, a 7th rounder. He could absolutely fall off the map at any time. But the numbers say Dak Prescott is turning the ball over at an alarming rate, and Brock Purdy's turnover-worthy plays are basically nil. So unless that changes, I think Brock's the guy.
Well, again, part of my reason for the under, too, is more about the number than necessarily anything else. I think that number came in way too high, and there's some overinflation on the number after all the overs came in last week, or at least should have if the idiot kicker would have made at least one extra point. But different discussion for a different day. All right, final one. And because our producer, Kyle, is such a good guy, I'm going to give him some guff here. But the way this was written up was someone hires Nathaniel Hackett this offseason. Well, I would say that's a fact. I mean, the world needs more bartenders, ditch diggers, certainly security guards, anything else. Yes, Nathaniel Hackett will get hired this offseason. To be a football coach, that's a whole different conversation. So Nathaniel Hackett gets hired as a football coach this offseason, fact or cap?
I think it's a fact. I do. Okay. I think there's going to be a team that believes that he can at least. Well, I was going to say, like, maybe it's football coach, he's one of those guys that's like in the booth, just like analyzing things. Like, football coach is a pretty wide ranging.
I was thinking like Pete Bell in Blue Chips. Nathaniel Hackett goes to coach Gilmore Junior High next year.
Exactly. So I do think you don't fall from the head coaching ranks and then completely drop off the map unless your name is Adam Gase. By the way, Adam Gase has not yet been hired to coach anywhere since he got fired from the Jets. I think it was 2020. Still is unemployed. I checked his Wikipedia page the other day because I was like, wait a minute, because I was thinking about Jets offensive coordinators and who the next one was going to be. And I was like, who was the OC when Gase was there? And I was like, wait a minute, Gase hasn't even been hired yet. Like, he's been unemployed for like 3 years. He was supposed to be like the guy on offense, and literally hasn't had a job.
That's what happens when you are the coordinator for Peyton Manning, who is absolutely his own offensive coordinator. I mean, Adam Gase and I could have done the same thing with Peyton Manning as a quarterback. It's really.
And when you're on drugs during your pregame press or your first press conference, and you're looking around like, you're probably not going to get many jobs after that, I don't think.
Yeah. There you go. All right. I want to remind you guys that Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins, pile up the money with Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas is giving you free money each week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $5 bonus up to $50 for betting each week afterwards. If you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. That'll bring us to our plays of the day. Make sure you guys go to Pickswise.com on the site or the app and check out one of our 3-star plays of the day. Jared, tell the Pickswise Nation what we have available.
Yeah, and these will have to do for me tonight because it's a Friday night. I don't really bet the NBA. There's only 2 NHL games, and the college basketball slate is incredibly subpar on a Friday night. So I would say for my play of the day, in addition to the plays of the day on the site, Tyler Mortimer's got a Pens, Senators money line bet, Hermanthus Nita, Pels, Magic total, Knicks, Hawks total, Philip Tomich checking in there, and Kyle Lupus with the Grizzlies, Lakers total. A lot of unders on the site tonight, so I don't know if you're in the mood for some under sweating in the NBA, but we've got you covered there. In terms of my play today, again, I don't have anything, for tonight. I think for this weekend, go read my column. I do like the Niners, but I'm on an island there. But I do think the more conservative bets for me this weekend will be the teasers. Philly, Kansas City, obvious teaser spots through both keys. I throw the Bengals in there too because I think that's going to be a close game. You get them all the way up to 11.5 in one of the lower total games of the weekend. So I think the Eagles and the Chiefs are going to be the most popular teaser of the week, but I think Cincinnati's got a low value too. So I did a round robin with all 3 of those: Eagles, Bengals, Chiefs, Bengals, Eagles, Chiefs. And then the Niners, that's the column this week. And I would say those are the bets that I would lean on the most this weekend, but we will chat with you Sunday. I'll be off tomorrow, but I'll chat with you Sunday and we'll reconvene then.
If I had to ask you a quick question, if it was Jared Superbook, right? And Jared was the bookmaker, and he got a ton of Chiefs Eagles teasers, and he had to make a prediction. Which one busts that teaser? Who is it?
Eagles.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah, because that's the divisional game. That's the game that has a little more variance to it because of Jalen Hurts' injury. I asked I communicate with Casey Degnan, who, by the way, if you don't follow, he's not really that active on social media, but just for the sake of boosting his ego and follower count, go give him a follow because he does a fantastic job with me every week. He's been as reliable as any person can be with answering, fielding questions, trying to communicate that to you guys. He actually, that was one of the things that he mentioned to me this week was, I'm not as bullish on the Eagles as maybe some other people are. And I framed the question to him this way, and I wrote it this way in the column too. I was like, if Jalen Hurts is healthy, the Eagles win and running, the Eagles win this game easily, right? And he's like, I don't know, easily. So there is some hesitation, I think, with some of the bookmakers this week. And you mentioned it too, based on the number alone at 7.5. The number's a little closer than maybe we would expect for a number 1 seed at home after the bye against the Giants team that, metrically speaking, is not good. And I think it's because of the variance with Jalen Hurts, and it's because of maybe where the Giants are as a team right now trending up that, I could see a world where the Giants stroll into the link and pull off that win. More scenarios, the Eagles win, but definitely more scenarios the Giants win than the Jaguars win, I think is fair to say.
All right, now time for our plays of the day. I tell you what, Jared, I will lead us off here because you do
your thing. I got nothing. I have everything I just have. I gave you, so I am out of bullets for today.
Well, Pickswise, you mentioned the Memphis Grizzlies game going under, and that sort of backs up where I am right now. Lakers are getting 7.5 points here at home. Now, Memphis, tough to bet against the Grizzlies right now. They've won 11 in a row. But it's even tougher to bet against LeBron James, especially coming off a 48-point night his last time out. Now, Grizzlies, 2-4 ATS over the last 6 games on this streak, and they got caught in a look-ahead spot the last time out against the Cavs. They're just 8-12-1 against the number on the road this season. I know the Lakers' defense is a problem. They've given up 121 points per game over their last 7, but at some point, this Memphis streak is going to end. I'm not sure it's tonight, but LeBron James ain't about to let John Morant and company stroll into his building and get smoked. So I'll take the Lakers, LeBron James, and the 7.5 points tonight at home against the Memphis Grizzlies for my play of the day. All right, that'll do it for us here today on Let's Bet It Again, presented by Superbook Sports. Make sure you guys download the Pickswise app. It's available on the Apple Store and Google Play. Subscribe to that Pickswise YouTube channel. Give a thumbs up and a like to the content there. Make sure you stay with us all the way throughout the rest of Divisional Playoff Weekend. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zinni. You guys have a wonderful Friday. Go get it. Go bet it. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.